Back to school is fast approaching across all of the country, and each of the provinces have spent millions of dollars preparing schools and classrooms to bring kids back, try and keep them safe. You heard from our earlier guests some of the concerns, though, that are still being raised. A group of experts have graded each province on which one has the best back-to-school plan. For more, I'm joined by McKeen. She's a reporter for the Toronto Star. She's in Victoria, and she did that report checking in with all of the experts. All right, Alex, tell us how each of the provinces were graded quickly, if you could, and how the process worked.
Sure. Yeah, how the process worked was basically we gathered together some summaries of the provincial plans to return to school in the fall, and distributed those plans out to a variety of experts, tried to get some different perspectives in there. And yeah, they were incredibly helpful and insightful in the feedback that they offered. And they offered a range of grades. I can go through one by one if you like, or I can give a summary.
Well, let me ask you this, because again, I'm conscious of time and of your time as well. But I want to just focus on Ontario for a second, because
Sure.
we hear Premier Doug Ford often say Ontario has the best plan in the country. So how was it graded compared to the other provinces?
Ontario kind of landed in the middle, I would say. It scored a B overall, so we got a B plus grade from one of our experts, a B from another, and a C from our third expert, who focused particularly on the issue of anxiety. And I thought this was a really interesting perspective to include, the fact that we know that kids have a harder time learning when they're feeling anxious. Teachers will likely have a much harder time doing their job when they're feeling anxious or uncertain about what's going on. So that's a perspective we knew we wanted to include in this piece. And not just Ontario, but most of the provinces, according to Dr. Coral, who gave the feedback on that particular issue, said that the provinces haven't really been explicit enough in their plans in terms of how they plan on abating anxiety and helping people kind of be reassured that this is the plan. If something changes, there will be a backup. You know, we have all these things in place. So that was the lowest score for Ontario. That was the C coming in there. Was the idea of the communication not necessarily being as clear as it could be for teachers and students to feel reassured. But B plus and B on things like physical distancing and mask wearing, which had a stronger mandate in Ontario than a lot of the other provinces as well.
Right. Okay. I noticed that the lowest grade was a C. That went to Quebec. What was the issue there?
Yeah, the issue in Quebec, or the issue that the experts that I spoke to focused on, was primarily the language around the classroom bubbles. So you'll notice a feature of almost all of the plans is that students are broken up into either learning groups or cohorts, but this is not the same as a bubble, right? It's not the same as this concept that we've all become familiar with, that we interact with people within our bubble and we can, maybe even have close contact with people within our bubble, but not people outside, right? The idea is that the bubble is something that's really protective. So I think the use of that term bubble in reference to schools in the Quebec plan is something that really put our experts on edge, because it's a false sense of security. It's not the case that the kids coming into class will have the protection of a bubble, because of course they're going home to their families. They're still seeing the other people within the social bubbles that their families have created. So we need to think about cohorts differently than bubbles, was the main thing that was pointed out to me by the experts. And we still need to have protection within those cohorts.
Yeah, very interesting point. Just a few seconds left. PEI, Nova Scotia, and Yukon and the Territories scored the highest. Tell me one thing they were all doing right based on the consensus of the experts you interviewed.
Yeah, I think PEI is probably the one with the most agreement. And the thing that PEI does really well is it creates those cohorts. It calls for the creation of cohorts. And then it also creates zones within their schools to say, okay, if I'm part of this cohort, here's where I'm allowed to go within the school. I think the experts really liked the clarity on that. Nova Scotia has some good backup plans within theirs. And the territories are in a bit of a unique situation, of course, with no active COVID-19 cases. So I think that's a bit of a different one.
Alex, a very thorough report. I encourage people to read it. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks, Jen.
Alex McKeen is a reporter for the Toronto Star, joining me from Victoria.